Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
The moment I stepped onto the cruise ship, I tried to convince myself this was going to be fine, maybe even good. Cambria had planned the whole family vacation down to the hour, calling it a reset after our rocky year. Her words, not mine. A grand reunion, she'd said, her entire clan, celebrating togetherness on a five-star liner headed to the Caribbean. I'd paid for the trip without blinking. After all, I just closed a crucial phase in a business deal I'd been working on for months. A partnership pitch in 2 days would either launch my company across the Asia-Pacific or leave us circling local markets forever. I needed peace, clarity, maybe even a little celebration. Instead, I got a broom closet. I should have known something was off when the steward hesitated after checking my room assignment. "This way, sir," he said, voice caught somewhere between sympathy and confusion. We walked past the glimmering suites with balcony doors, past the ocean view cabins, past the mid-deck quarters, all the way to a narrow corridor that smelled of industrial cleaner. He opened the door and gestured. It was insulting. No window, no desk, just a single twin bed jammed between two beige walls. A broom hung behind the door. A mop bucket was tucked beneath the built-in shelf. It took me a full 3 seconds to process that this wasn't a mistake. "Is this a crew room?" I asked, stepping inside with a knot tightening in my stomach. "No, sir," the steward replied. "This is the room listed under your reservation. Booked by Cambria Donovan." I blinked at him, but he was already retreating with a polite nod. I pulled out my phone and checked our joint travel app. Sure enough, Cambria had booked 2 premium ocean view suites. One for her, her brother Des, and cousin Rena, and one for me. This janitor's closet with a mattress. I stood in the center of the room, if you could call it that, feeling the steel hum of the ship's engine beneath my feet. The scent of bleach stung my nose. I didn't know whether to laugh or rage. I'd covered the bill for 16 people, Cambria's family, plus her gaggle of influencer friends, and somehow ended up in a cell that wouldn't pass for a coat room at Motel 6. That evening, I walked into the formal dining hall with a jaw so tight I thought I might break a molar. Cambria sat center table, draped in an emerald green gown, laughing over a glass of champagne like she'd just closed a modeling deal. Her friends Bree and Margot flanked her, giggling with forkfuls of truffle risotto. Des leaned back in his chair with that smug, country club smirk he'd mastered at age 12. "Hey babe," Cambria cooed when she saw me. "Did you find your room okay?" I held her gaze. "You mean the closet?" She didn't even blink. Just turned back to her wine. It was the last one available. Thought it'd be funny. Bree laughed into her glass. You should have seen his face when he walked in. "Cam, you're evil." My pulse drummed in my ears. Rena leaned over, chuckling. "Hey, at least you won't get seasick. No window, no problem, right?" I could have stood up. I could have said something, made a scene, but I didn't. Instead, I sat down at the edge of the table, where the server had already placed a name card that read, Mr. Donovan. Not Reed, just a polite placeholder, like I didn't even matter enough to be personalized. As the meal went on, I felt like I was observing the world from the bottom of a well. Their laughter echoed but didn't touch me. Their conversations felt like distant traffic. They mocked my cabin, my work habits, even my quiet demeanor. Cambria made a joke about how I hibernate like a bear when he's in project mode. Everyone laughed. I didn't. They didn't know, or care, that in 2 days, I was pitching a deal worth 7 figures. They didn't ask about it, didn't even pretend. And as I picked at a plate of overcooked salmon, I realized something even more bitter than the wine in my glass. They didn't respect me, not one bit. That night, lying in the dark on a mattress that sagged in the middle, I stared at the ceiling just inches above my face and tried to remember the last time Cambria had spoken to me with admiration, the last time she'd looked at me with warmth. All I could see now were smirks and sideways glances and champagne clinks that sounded like nails in a coffin. I wasn't just cramped in a broom closet. I was cornered in a marriage that treated me like a punchline. And that pitch in 2 days? It wasn't just a business deal anymore. It was my lifeline, my reset, the only part of this cruise that was still mine. And I'd be damned if I let them sink it. The sunlight barely touched my face in that windowless cell they had the audacity to call a cabin. I'd woken with a stiff neck, thanks to the mattress that felt more like stacked towels than anything meant for sleep. But I didn't have time to mope. I had a pitch to prepare, my pitch. While Cambria and her curated entourage were out chasing sunrise selfies and spa vouchers, I was hunched over my backup laptop, refining slide transitions and anticipating CO Mason Urek's toughest questions. This promotion wasn't just a ladder rung. It was the whole damn building. Asia Pacific expansion, strategic director, company equity. Real legacy. I just finalized my backup graphics when my phone buzzed. Notifications flooded in. Instagram, Facebook, even a TikTok link. I hadn't touched social media in weeks, but curiosity clawed at me. I opened the first one. A beach shot. The whole group. Cambria, Bree, Rena, Des, even Cambria's college friend Noelle, posing on the shore with matching hats and drinks in hand. The caption? Ocean breeze, no dead weight. Bree had tagged everyone, except me. I scrolled further. A boomerang clip of Cambria and Des cheers NG cocktails at a pool bar. Sibling vibes only, it read. Then I saw it. A story posted by Bree, captioned #workaholic_husband, with a filter that made me look half sick and squinty. It was a freeze frame of me at last night's dinner, mid-bite, mouth awkwardly open like some hungry animal caught in motion. They turned me into a meme. Bree added a snide sticker that read, "Should we feed him a spreadsheet?" I stared at the screen, thumb frozen. There was no accidental exclusion, no miscommunication. I wasn't just missing from the beach outing, I was deliberately left out. Mocked, laughed at behind my back by people who smiled at me over appetizers. I left the cabin without even tying my shoes and found Cambria lounging on a deck chair, soaking in the sun with a cocktail in hand and sunglasses the size of her ego. "You didn't even tell me," I said, standing at the edge of her chair. The beach trip. The group packages. I wasn't included in anything. She didn't look up. "You were working," she said flatly, lifting her drink. "Didn't want to interrupt your little grind." "Don't do that," I snapped, voice low but sharp. "Don't pretend like this is about my schedule. You booked this trip. You booked that closet. You excluded me." She shrugged. "You always act like everything's life or death with work. I figured I'd let you do your thing." I wanted to laugh, or yell, or throw that cocktail straight into the sea. Instead, I stood there, just long enough for Bree to walk by, flash a mock sympathetic smile, and say, "We thought you liked being alone. You're so serious all the time." I didn't respond. I just walked off. I wasn't going to fight for a seat at a table built on sarcasm and stage photos. If I had to spend the rest of this trip being invisible to them, then fine, let them watch what I did with it. I headed to the guest services desk to upgrade my Wi-Fi package. That's where I met Amira. She had a neat black bun, crisp uniform, and eyes that read people before they spoke. "Can I help you, sir?" she asked. "Yeah," I replied, pulling up my itinerary. "I need full-speed data access. And I'd like to know why I wasn't listed under any of the family event packages." She typed, brows raised. "Donovan, you're not attached to the main party. No excursion bookings, no lounge access, not even dinner groupings past the first night. Cambria Donovan booked the entire thing. She's my wife." Amira glanced up. "Are you sure you're not here alone?" The words were light, almost joking, but they hit harder than any of Bree's filters. I forced a tight laugh. "Some days I'm not." Amira stared at me a beat longer than she needed to, then handed me a printed voucher. "If you need a quiet place to work," she said, lowering her voice, "we have a small business lounge on Deck 8. Not many use it, but it's private and functional." I nodded, grateful. "Thanks." That night, back in my cabin, I studied my reflection in the bathroom mirror. There was a time when Cambria called me her rock, when she admired how I stayed grounded while building something of my own. But the deeper I built, the more her respect eroded. Maybe because she didn't get to take credit for it. Maybe because she couldn't control it. I picked up my laptop, slid my passkey into my pocket, and headed for Deck 8. The ship was quiet. Most people were dancing on the top deck or posing under moonlight for social media validation. I took the elevator down and stepped into the cool, dimly lit business lounge. This space was mine. This silence was mine. Let them laugh. Let them post. I was about to give them something worth watching. The morning started deceptively calm. I was feeling, dare I say it, focused. Deck 8's business lounge had become my sanctuary. I'd spent most of the night finalizing the revised slide deck and tightening my opening hook for Mason. It was going to work. The pitch was strong, the data airtight, and the backup systems were locked tighter than a bank vault. Everything I needed to win this promotion, this division, this freedom, was on that laptop. And then I returned from the coffee run. I remember the way the hallway lighting flickered, the way the polished floors reflected my steps back toward my cabin. I balanced the paper cup in one hand, thinking about how I might even reward myself with a massage once the pitch was over. I'd earned it. Hell, I was earning it right now. But when I opened my cabin door, everything stopped. My laptop was on the floor. Open. Its screen dark and flickering. Water pooled around it, soaking into the carpet, trailing from the corner like a careless spill. My stomach dropped. I stepped in and immediately saw it, the unmistakable glisten of salt water. A crushed plastic water bottle beside the bed, its cap off, the scent briny and sharp. No. I knelt, lifting the device carefully. Water dripped from the USB ports. The keyboard was shorting out. I tried the power button, once, twice. Nothing. It was dead. Not asleep. Not frozen. Fried. My pulse spiked. My head roared. This wasn't clumsiness. This was sabotage. A soft knock came at the door. I didn't even look up before it opened. Bree. Mimosa in hand, not a care in the world. Oops, she said, voice laced with mock pity. Looks like someone forgot to close their bottle. You know, maybe this is a sign. Work less. Live more. I stared at her. Not blinking. Not breathing. She smiled. Guess you're fired now, huh? And then Rena appeared behind her, sipping from a bright pink straw. Maybe now you'll finally have time for family, she chirped. That was it. I stood, fist clenched, laptop in my hand like a ruined limb. Bree laughed as she backed out of the doorway. Chill, read. It's not like it was on purpose. Liar. I didn't scream. Didn't curse. I simply grabbed my phone and texted the one person on this ship who hadn't treated me like a walking joke. Me, Amira. Emergency. Laptop destroyed. Need help. Please. Her reply came in seconds. Amira. Business center. Now. We've got tech support. I didn't change. Didn't stop for shoes. Just grabbed the soap device and left the stench of betrayal behind. Amira was waiting by the business center, her arms crossed and her face unreadable. Without a word, she led me inside where a young technician named Mateo stood beside a clean desk and 2 external monitors. She told me you'd be coming, Mateo said. We'll see what we can salvage. He took the laptop with a reverence I appreciated, popped the casing, disconnected the battery, set up a data retrieval unit. I stood back, hard hammering. Minutes stretched into an hour. Then Mateo looked up. Cloud backups, he asked. I nodded quickly. Encrypted. Multiple syncs. Google, Dropbox, Company Vault. Last updated last night. Good. I can route everything through this workstation. We'll start clean. As he worked, I exhaled for the first time all day. Then Amira's voice broke through. You might want to see this, she said, holding out a tablet. This came through the ship's guest sharing system. It's not private yet. I took the tablet. A message thread. Forwarded by an anonymous sender. Rena to Bree. Cambria says get rid of it. If he blows the presentation, he'll come crawling back. We'll finally have him where we want him. I stared at the words. Read them twice. A screenshot of Cambria's name at the top. Her initials in the preview bubble. There was no wiggle room here. No misinterpretation. They did this to break me. All this time, I thought Cambria had just become indifferent. Bored. Maybe resentful of my ambition. But no, she declared war. Quietly. Strategically. Behind smiles and champagne flutes, she'd orchestrated a takedown. With her little clique of enablers, she decided the best way to control me was to wreck me. If I failed the pitch, I'd need her. I'd lose leverage. Lose momentum. She'd become my rescuer, not my saboteur. But I didn't crumble. I didn't panic. I turned to Mateo. Can you mirror my old laptop's environment on this setup? He nodded. Give me 2 hours. I nodded back. Let's get to work. Amira placed a bottle of water on the table, closed tight, and said, You're not alone in this. Just say the word if you need anything. I gave her a grateful look. They thought they'd drown me. But I'm not the kind of man who sinks. I wasn't angry anymore. That was the terrifying part. I wasn't shouting or pacing or planning dramatic confrontations. The anger had calcified into something colder, cleaner, like ice around my spine. I'd spent years building contingency systems for clients. Risk management was in my bloodstream. Redundancy wasn't optional, it was a principle. So when they tried to drown my pitch, they didn't end my presentation. They just woke up the part of me that doesn't lose. Mateo worked quietly beside me, fingers flying over the keys like a concert pianist. My cloud backups had held. Every slide, every dataset, Every animation, they were intact. Scratched maybe, but not destroyed. I sat there, polishing the transitions again, rewriting my speaker notes from memory, strengthening every segment with hard-won precision. No emotion, no distractions, just systems. Amira brought me a fresh coffee and didn't ask questions. I liked that about her. She wasn't curious in the nosy way most people were. She was observant, deliberate. She simply placed the cup beside me, whispered, "You've got this," and left me to it. The business center was technically closed to passengers at night, but Amira had booked me the room under a provisional work permit, completely within cruise line protocol. She'd even left a small plate of food and a card key to the staff pantry. No more dining halls. No more smirking faces. Cambria hadn't texted, hadn't checked in, not even to fake concern about my destroyed laptop. And I realized something I probably should have seen sooner. She didn't think I had a plan B. She thought I'd fold. The thing was, I didn't just have a plan B. I had B through Z. By 1 a.m., I'd completed the 4th redundancy upload. One on the cloud, one on a hard drive, one to a secure email account, and one burned into a digital presentation hub with 2-factor authentication. I even created a silent alert trigger. If anyone attempted to access the file without my Face ID, the entire system would self-lock and notify me. I was no longer trying to impress them. I was safeguarding myself from them. Sometime after 2 o'clock, I shut down the monitors and leaned back in the chair. The room was quiet except for the low hum of ship engines below. The ocean rolled around us like a sleeping giant, unaware of the small wars we were fighting on its surface. For the first time in days, I smiled. The next morning, I walked into the breakfast lounge looking calm, controlled. The same crumpled clothes from yesterday, but with none of the weight they thought they'd buried me under. I sat at a quiet table near the window, ordered nothing but black coffee, and opened my tablet. I wasn't hiding anymore. Let them see me. Cambria spotted me from across the room. She was wearing a flowy peach dress, the kind she used to wear on our early vacations, back when we were still in sync. She crossed over, drink in hand, posture rehearsed. "You should come with us today," she said, smiling like none of this ever happened. "We're going to that private beach cove, the one Rena found on the itinerary. You've been glued to that screen for days." I looked up, slow and steady. "It's already done," I said. Her smile faltered, just slightly. "What's done?" "The presentation, the backup, the final prep. It's locked, loaded, and ready." She blinked once. "Oh, I know about the message," I added casually. "The one you forwarded to Bree. That did it." Her throat bobbed in a quiet swallow. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure," I said, and took a slow sip of coffee. She stared at me for another beat. Then the smirk returned, just a little cracked. "You always were obsessive. Maybe this cruise is exactly what you needed. Just relax, Reed." I smiled politely. Maybe it's exactly what you needed. I left her there, standing like a glitch in the program she thought she controlled. Back in the business center, I ran one last systems test. Everything worked. Seamlessly. Mateo gave me a thumbs up. Amira smiled as I thanked her for the 100th time. That night, I didn't go to the group dinner. I didn't need to sit through another meal where I was the ghost between the plates. I stayed in the lounge instead, watching the moon reflect off the sea through the giant windows. I thought about how funny it was, how Cambria and her crew had tried to put me in a box. Small, humble, breakable. But all they'd done was corner me into clarity. And now? Now I wasn't just coming back. I was coming back stronger. And they wouldn't even see it until I was already standing in the winner's circle alone, unshaken, and completely untouchable. I logged into the video call 10 minutes early. No distractions. No shaky hands. Just me, a clean presentation, and the ocean rolling beyond the tinted glass of the business lounge windows. Mateo had double-checked the signal. Amira stood discreetly by the door like my own personal security detail. The chair was stiff, the table basic, but I sat like it was a boardroom throne. And then Mason's face filled the screen. "Reed," he said with a nod. "Looks like you're coming to us from paradise." "Something like that," I replied, keeping my tone professional. "Let's make it worth the signal." The pitch began. Every word, every transition, landed like a strike. I didn't rush. I didn't stumble. I laid out the market data, the growth projections, the supply chain efficiencies. When I paused for breath, Mason leaned back and gave a slow nod, the kind that said I'd already sold it, and we were just dancing now. Other executives asked questions. I anticipated each one. When someone raised concerns about scalability, I countered with an updated infrastructure rollout. When they mentioned risk exposure, I pulled up simulations. By the time I hit the final slide, I wasn't sweating, I was soaring. The call ended with Mason saying, "We'll be in touch shortly." 2 minutes later, I got the message. From Mason Urek. Subject, new territory. You didn't just hit the target. You built the damn map. Welcome to the big leagues. Full division lead. And one more thing. Attached to the email was a contract draft, stock options, relocation benefits, team autonomy. My throat tightened, but not from nerves. It was happening. And then I read the last line of his message. We've secured a contract with your current cruise line. You'll be overseeing the launch of their new digital marketing strategy. Looks like you'll be running the ship, literally. I let out a short, stunned laugh. Cambria had booked this cruise to shrink me, to box me in. And now? I was about to become one of the people who called the shots from the top. I texted Amira. Me, think I could get a better view? Her reply came instantly. Amira, Penthouse is ready. Captain's offering a personal escort. I stood, packed my laptop, and followed Amira out into the corridor. She led me through staff passages and up a private elevator that opened to a suite that looked like it belonged in a 5-star Manhattan hotel. Floor-to-ceiling windows, marble counters, a king-sized bed with actual breathing room. I stepped onto the wraparound balcony and felt wind. Real wind. Space. Perspective. The door clicked behind me. I turned to see a sharply dressed man in crisp white with gold stripes on his shoulders. Mr. Donovan, he said, offering his hand. I'm Captain Hellstrom. It's a pleasure. My staff tells me you've had an unusual experience on board. We'd like to extend our deepest apologies and our finest accommodations for the remainder of your stay. I shook his hand, bemused. Appreciated. If you'd like, I can escort you to dinner this evening. It may. Send the appropriate message. I consider that for all of 1 second. Perfect. By the time we entered the main dining hall, the room was already buzzing. Cambria's table was near the center, full of laughter, clinking glasses, and shallow compliments. I walked in wearing the only suit I'd packed, a navy blue number I brought just in case something miraculous happened. Well, it had. The laughter dipped when people saw me. Cambria's brows lifted. Bree looked away. Des sneered reflexively, like his instincts didn't have time to catch up to his confusion. Then the captain stepped in beside me. Mr. Donovan, he said loud enough for the table to hear. Your executive suite is fully prepared. Shall I walk you there after dinner? The table froze. Rena choked on her water. Bree blinked like someone had unplugged her. Cambria's fork dropped, clattering against her plate. I smiled. Not smug. Just satisfied. Cambria stood slowly. What executive suite? I turned my gaze to her. The one your husband earned. Silence stretched across the table like a drawn-out verdict. I didn't linger. I gave the captain a slight nod and followed him out, leaving behind half-full glasses, unread menus, and a table of people who suddenly realized I wasn't the underdog in their story. I was the storm they didn't see coming. That night, I stood on the penthouse balcony, sipping wine Amira had hand-selected. I looked out over the ship, where lights shimmered on the water and music thudded faintly from the deck below. They tried to box me in. Instead, they handed me the keys to the ship. And this time, I wasn't giving them back. From the penthouse balcony, I could see everything. Their suites were 2 decks below, cute, middle-tier packages Cambria had probably handpicked for proximity to the pool and social traffic. I watched them now, clustered on their narrow balcony, passing around wine and exaggerated laughter. To them, I was still a few floors away. But to me, they were now beneath me in every way that mattered. I sat at the edge of my wraparound glass table, scribbled a short note on the cruise line's monogrammed card stock, and signed it with deliberate elegance. Thank you for the motivation. RD. Then I called for room service and ordered a bottle of their best champagne, not for me, but to be delivered directly to Cambria's suite. Chilled. With the note. I made sure it arrived during their pre-dinner gathering, just in time to be opened while they were still trying to wrap their heads around how I'd gone from broom closet to business class. About an hour later, there was a knock at my door. Cambria. Her dress was red this time. Tight, low cut, and paired with the same manipulative smirk she'd worn since college. Only now, the edges were frayed. She stepped into the suite uninvited, her eyes darting across the room like she was casing a mansion she didn't think I deserved. You think you're better than us now? She said, her voice low and sharp. No. I replied, leaning casually against the table. I know I am. You smug bastard. I'm a bastard with receipts. I picked up the tablet from the counter and pressed play. The footage loaded instantly, Rena and Bree entering my cabin, laughing, carrying that water bottle. Bree tipping it directly over the keyboard of my laptop. Rena snapping a picture. Clear as day. Not just sabotage, documentation. Cambria's expression flickered, her skin paling beneath her carefully applied bronzer. I also have the message you forwarded to Bree, I added. The one about getting rid of it so I'd crawl back. Real team spirit. She took a step back. You'll destroy me. I tilted my head. No, you destroyed yourself. I'm just the guy holding the flashlight. She opened her mouth to argue. Something about manipulation, misunderstanding, miscommunication, but the words tangled. For the first time in years, she looked powerless in front of me. You like me quiet, I said. Like that I never made a scene. Like that I played the part. But while you were mocking me, I was building something. Something you never got to touch. Cambria's face fell into something halfway between a plea and a scowl. It was a joke. $2,000 of water damage isn't a joke. Public humiliation? That's not a joke either. But don't worry, Bree's about to find out what a real consequence looks like. She narrowed her eyes. What do you mean? I picked up my phone and tapped open Bree's influencer page. It had recently posted an ad for a beauty product she claimed to use daily. I enlarged the disclaimer, or lack thereof. No sponsorship disclosure. It's a violation of FTC regulations. I flagged it. With screenshots. Cambria blinked. You wouldn't. I already did. She backed up, stunned. You're ruining lives over a vacation? No, I said. You tried to clip my wings. I'm just letting you see what happens when you fail. That afternoon, Bree's public page went into private mode. A legal rep for the cruise line called me directly, asking if I'd be pressing charges for the water damage. I declined for now, but I knew they were rattled. I could feel it. Later, as the sun dipped over the water, I stood on the balcony in silence. Not basking, not gloating, just breathing. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't trying to earn respect from people who never intended to give it. Cambria had always wanted control of her image, of the narrative, of me. She couldn't stand that I had something she didn't. Purpose. Not clout. Not followers. Something deeper. Something real. I didn't go to dinner that night. I had mine delivered steak, rare, with garlic potatoes and a bottle of red. I ate with my feet up and my name glowing in the corner of my email inbox. Division lead, APAC launch. I read it twice, then smiled at the irony. They wanted to shrink me. Now they had front row seats to the opposite. After dinner, I took a walk through the guest decks. Not to make a scene, just to let them see. The shift in posture. The subtle nods from staff. The quiet whispers of guests who'd heard what happened. One even leaned over and whispered, "Are you the guy they put in the closet?" I smiled. No, I'm the guy who just bought the floor. By morning, the ship buzzed with whispers. Not the usual tourist chatter about excursions and buffets. These were more pointed. Hushed laughter when I passed by. A woman at the spa muttering, "That's him," behind her cucumber mask. And every time I walked into a space, lounges, cafes, the sun deck, it was like someone had hit pause. That's what happens when the story flips. When the man they laughed at becomes the name they can't stop saying. It started when Bree's influencer sponsorship post disappeared. Within hours, 3 more brands removed their tagged affiliations from her feed. Then the gossip accounts picked it up. Someone had reported a breach. FTC violations. Suddenly her vacation content was gone. Wiped? And the apology video? Cropped lighting, shaky voice, tears that dried too fast. No one believed it. Cambria's followers turned next. One by one, they asked where I was in her perfectly edited photos. Someone dug up the hashtag #WorkaholicHusband post and compared it to the footage of me walking arm in arm with the captain. Then came the side-by-side, her suite versus my penthouse balcony. They were doing the math, and she was coming up short. That morning, I stepped into the cafe near Deck 6. The barista smiled awkwardly and handed me a coffee I hadn't ordered. "Compliments of the gentleman at table 4, she whispered. I turned. Des. Sitting alone, nursing what looked like regret and a double espresso. I walked over, kept my stance neutral. He gestured to the chair. "Look," he said, rubbing his temples, "the whole room thing, the jokes, it got out of hand. It was just supposed to be, you know, funny." "Funny," I said, voice calm. "Do you usually destroy $2,000 laptops for laughs?" He grimaced. That wasn't me. That was Bree and Rena. I didn't know they'd actually do it. But you were fine watching it happen. He didn't respond. Just looked into his coffee like it might save him. You thought I'd take it, I added. Because I always have. Des shrugged. You're the guy who never fights back. I leaned in, voice low and sharp. Not fighting back and letting you hang yourselves? That's not the same thing. Des had nothing to say to that. I stood up and left him with his cooling espresso and all the things he didn't have the courage to say out loud. Rena? She blocked me. No explanation. Just vanished from every platform, like a magician running from her own disappearing act. Bree? She was escorted off the ship early. Some nonsense about brand conflicts, but I knew better. Cruise lines don't tolerate liability, especially not ones I now had a say in. Cambria tried a different tactic, tears. She cornered me in the hallway that evening, eyes red, voice cracking. She even wore the bracelet I'd given her 3 anniversaries ago. I hadn't seen it in years. Reed, she whispered. Can we talk? I nodded once. She stepped in close, like old times. Like she expected proximity to erase history. I know I messed up, she said. But this, us, it's worth saving. I let the silence stretch. You used to need me, she added softly. We were a team. No, I said. You treated me like a project. Something to refine, reshape, clip and clean up so I wouldn't embarrass you. She blinked, stunned. That's not fair. What's not fair? I said, stepping back, is everything you did and still thinking you get to cry your way out of it. The slap came out of nowhere. A sharp sting across my cheek, more reflex than thought. I didn't flinch. Just turned slowly, eyes locking on hers. Her hand trembled. The corridor had gone silent. Then came the footsteps. 2 uniformed security officers approached from the side entrance. They'd seen everything. One of them stepped between us, his voice firm but calm. Ma'am, we're going to need you to return to your cabin. Cambria opened her mouth in protest, then saw the camera mounted in the corner. She nodded, lips pressed tight, and let them walk her away. I stood in that hallway, cheek tingling, chest calm. No rage. No vengeance boiling under the surface. Just clarity. Sometimes karma doesn't come with thunder. Sometimes it wears a name badge and speaks politely. That night, I stood on my balcony again. The stars felt closer from up there, like I'd risen above more than just the decks. Below, their world was crumbling, sponsorships gone, reputation stained, alliances unraveling. And I hadn't raised my voice once. I wasn't planning to attend the family dinner. Cambria's mother had sent the invitation herself, through the ship's concierge, no less. It would mean a lot if you joined us, the note said. As if I were some distant in-law, not the man they'd all spent the last week mocking, excluding, and treating like an afterthought. Maybe they thought an invitation made up for the closet cabin, for the sabotage, for the jokes. Still, I accepted. Not for them, but because some stories need to be finished in front of the people who tried to write you out of them. I dressed with intention. Crisp white shirt, tailored navy slacks, no tie. Understated, clean, sharp. I didn't need flash. I had the truth. I brought my tablet, 2 fully charged, queued up, no theatrics. If I was going to be heard tonight, it wouldn't be with raised voices or desperate pleas. Just facts. Cold, undeniable, time-stamped facts. The dining room was one of the ship's finer ones, white linens, flickering candles, a pianist in the corner playing songs too soft to be remembered. Cambria's family filled the long table, dressed like they were auditioning for a magazine spread. Her father sat at the head, stoic. Her mother beside him, prim and polished. Cambria, further down, in a black dress 2 sizes tighter than it needed to be, her eyes avoiding mine from the moment I walked in. Reed, her mother greeted, standing and kissing the air beside my cheek. Thank you for coming. I nodded politely. Thank you for the invitation. No one knew what to say after that. Rena glanced at her wine like it held secrets. Des pretended to study the menu. A few tried weak smiles, the kind that don't reach the eyes. They were nervous. I didn't engage. They should have waited until the plates Appetizers were cleared, came, the wine scallops refilled, with lemon the foam murmur and softened. microgreens. Then I stood up tried slowly, to spark small placing talk. my tablet in the center of the table and tapping the screen. The video began to play. Footage of Bree and Rena in my closet room. Bree opening the water bottle. Rena filming it. Laughter. The splash. My laptop, lifeless, soaked. I didn't speak. I let them watch. Then the audio message. Cambria's voice. If he blows the presentation, he'll come crawling back. We'll finally have him where we want him. The room went still. The pianist's song drifted away. All that remained was silence, and the sound of reputations imploding. Des spoke first. Okay, that's enough. I looked at him. Calm. Steady. No. It's not even close. Cambria's mother was pale, her mouth parted slightly as if waiting for someone else to speak first. Her father's brow was furrowed, not with anger, just confusion, like he was trying to piece together how the son-in-law he'd ignored all week had just turned the entire table on its side. Cambria's voice broke the silence. This is out of context. No, I said, cutting her off. This is the context you built, brick by brick. I just held up a mirror. Her father looked at me then, really looked. Why didn't you come to us sooner? I gave a bitter smile. Because you never asked. Her mother reached for her wine, her hand trembling. We didn't know. You didn't care to, I replied. Cambria stood suddenly. So what now? You want applause? A medal? No, I said. I want distance. And then I turned to leave. I didn't wait for dessert. Didn't stick around to hear the aftershocks or the spin. I walked out, the weight I'd carried for the last several years peeling off me with every step. In the elevator, I stood alone. Just me and the hum of motion. I didn't feel victorious. This wasn't about winning. This was about clarity. For years, I had compromised, adjusted, rationalized, trying to fit into a family that never left space for me. A marriage that treated my loyalty like currency to be spent. No more. Later that night, I sat on the balcony, the wind cool against my skin. Below, the dining room lights shimmered through the glass windows like distant stars. I imagined the chatter, the questions, the apologies whispered too late. They weren't talking about me like a joke anymore. They were talking about the man who brought the receipts. The final gala was the ship's crowning jewel, a black tie event under the stars, hosted on the upper deck, complete with a string quartet and a glistening champagne tower that looked more like a symbol of false status than celebration. It was supposed to be a toast to connections, laughter, and the unbreakable bond of family. At least, that's what the program read. But for me, it was something else entirely. A turning point. A curtain call. I stood in front of the mirror in the Penthouse suite, adjusting the cufflinks I hadn't worn in years. They had been a gift from my late mentor, the one who taught me that real power doesn't announce itself with noise. It shows up, sharp and unbothered, while everyone else scrambles to catch up. Amira knocked once before entering, a subtle nod of approval in her eyes. She wore a sapphire dress that turned heads the moment we stepped into the hallway. You ready? She asked. More than ever. The captain greeted us at the elevator. Mr. Donovan, he said, your table is waiting. We descended onto the gala floor like gravity worked differently for us. The crowd shifted when we entered, heads turning, conversations halting just long enough for stares to pass between guests. I could feel it in the air, curiosity thick as humidity. They knew. Maybe not the full story, but enough. Enough to whisper. Enough to wonder. Enough to regret. Cambria sat alone at her table, phone in hand, endlessly scrolling. Her posture was stiff, face lit by the cold glare of the screen. I knew what she saw, comments drying up, followers dropping, brand partnerships evaporating like spilled wine in the sun. The empire she built on curated images and smirking captions was crumbling, and she didn't have the grace to look away while it fell. Des stood a few feet behind a group of investors, clearly eavesdropping without invitation. Rena hadn't shown up. Smart. There was nothing left for her here. The captain tapped his glass once. The quartet faded. A hush swept through the deck. We gather tonight to celebrate resilience, he began, and those among us who remind us what leadership, integrity, and fortitude look like. He turned toward me, lifting his glass. Mr. Reed Donovan, your grace under pressure has inspired more than a few of us on this voyage. Tonight, we toast you, not just for surviving rough waters, but for rising above them. Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then swelling as others followed suit. I felt Amira's hand rest lightly against my arm. I didn't need to stand. I didn't need to give a speech just yet. I just lifted my glass and met the moment with the quiet confidence of a man who no longer needed validation to know his worth. Cambria looked up, finally noticing. Her face crumbled in real time, eyes wide, mouth parted, disbelief etched into every wrinkle of her expression. I saw the second she realized this wasn't just a recovery. It was a transformation. She stood, walked over. Reed, she said softly, forcing a smile. We need to talk. I turned toward her, polite but distant. There's nothing left to say. Yes, there is, she insisted. I wasn't fair to you. I let things get out of hand. I was trying to protect. You weren't protecting anything but your pride, I cut in. You didn't trip and fall into betrayal. You packed your bags, boarded the plan, and followed through. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I learned better than to mistake them for sincerity. We can fix this, she whispered. We still have time. I looked past her, out over the ocean. You don't fix what's been deliberately broken, I said. You replace it. Then I stepped away. I walked to the mic at the front of the deck, the soft murmur of the crowd rising around me. I took a breath, let the silence settle, and then spoke. Sometimes you think the fight is about proving yourself to others. But it's not, I said, voice clear. Sometimes, it's about remembering who you were when they forget. When they laugh. When they lock you in closets and write you out of the story. I let that hang for a moment, then continued. You don't need revenge to win. You just need to win on your own terms, and let them watch. The applause was stronger this time. More honest. It wasn't about power. It was about respect. And this time, it wasn't optional. I stepped down from the mic, returned to my seat beside Amira, and let the music rise again. Cambria didn't speak to me after that. She returned to her table, alone, holding her phone like it was her last thread of identity. Des vanished sometime before the second course. Probably couldn't face what he saw in that mirror now. The empire they built on mockery, performance, and manipulation collapsed that night, not with explosions, but with silence. With distance. With the quiet reckoning of people realizing the man they thought they could minimize had just become the headline of the whole damn cruise. The morning light came soft and slow, painting golden streaks across the open sea like it was trying to apologize for everything the week had been. I stood on the penthouse balcony, robe tied loosely, bare feet against cool tile. A breeze whispered through the railings, salty and pure. The chaos was over now. No more dinners. No more games. Just quiet. Just breath. Room service had arrived 15 minutes ago, perfectly on time, with fresh fruit, eggs Benedict, warm croissants, and a pot of dark roast coffee. The tray sat beside me, untouched for now. I wasn't hungry yet. I was processing. I picked up the champagne flute, orange juice this time, and lifted it gently. To rebirth, I whispered. Below, the deck was starting to fill with guests gathering for departure. Some stood in small groups, laughing and hugging, taking final selfies. Others rolled their luggage toward elevators, already mentally back on land. And there, near the bow of the ship, was Cambria. Alone. Wearing yesterday's dress, sunglasses too big for her face, dragging a designer suitcase like it was a punishment. Her phone hung in her hand, screen blank. I could almost hear the absence of notifications from up here. She looked up, saw me. I didn't move, didn't smirk, didn't wave. I just held her gaze from above. She blinked hard, like she was fighting tears or sunlight or both. Then she turned and walked toward the line of disembarking passengers, no entourage, no applause, no stage photos this time. A soft chime pulled my attention back inside. My phone. A new message from Mason. Subject. Welcome to the big seat. Attachment. Final contract. Signed. I opened the document, skimming the terms again, regional lead, full authority, flexible base of operations. And the best part? A personal clause I'd negotiated during a call last night with our legal team. Termination of preferred guest status, Cambria Donovan and family, effective immediately. Cause, abuse of company-affiliated client. Non-reversible. It was official. No more cruise line perks. No more invites. No more leveraging my name behind my back. I had removed their access to the empire they once mocked me for building. I sat down at the balcony table, finally digging into the breakfast. The eggs were still warm. The coffee rich and bitter, just how I liked it. I chewed slowly, deliberately, savoring each bite like it was a reward. Because it was. They'd shoved me into a closet, hoping to contain me, reduce me, make me doubt myself enough to beg for approval. But that backfired. Because the thing about closets? You don't lock someone like me in one without eventually giving them something to push off of. They gave me leverage. And I used it to launch. I picked up my tablet and tapped open the drone footage Amira had captured early this morning, me in the robe, glass raised, sun rising behind me. It was tasteful, elegant, symbolic. The perfect closing shot for the Reclaim Your Narrative marketing campaign we were about to launch under my direction. Amira had uploaded the clip with the caption. When they underestimate you, let them. Just make sure the view from the top is unforgettable. I approved it with one tap. Scheduled it for tomorrow. Timing mattered. Another message buzzed in, this one from a cruise line exec. Your story's creating buzz. Press wants to do a feature. You good with that? I smirked. Let them print it. Let them tell the tale of the man in the closet who ended up owning the balcony. I heard a gentle knock on the door. It was Amira, holding 2 travel mugs and wearing a smile that didn't need explanation. Thought you might want coffee for the road, she said. I stood, took the mug, and nodded. Thanks for everything. She shrugged. You made it easy. Most people crack under pressure. You? You rebuilt the pressure valve. I laughed softly. They gave me no choice. No, she said. They gave you motive. We stood in silence for a moment, overlooking the sea. Then she added, You really done with them? All of them. I thought about it. About the dinners, the mockery, the silence when I needed support, the sabotage they called jokes. Yes, I said finally. Letting go doesn't mean forgiving. Sometimes it just means knowing better. She smiled. Then you're ready. I grabbed my small carry-on bag, the only luggage I had brought. Light. Free. Not because I was underprepared. Because I didn't plan on returning the same. As I walked out of the suite and into the private corridor reserved for VIP departures, I didn't look back. Didn't need to. Some endings come with explosions. Mine came with a balcony view and the peace of knowing I'd never let anyone shrink me again.